Episode 5, The Flood, the Fake Listing, and the Return of Jeffrey. This podcast reflects personal memories, interpretations, and opinions. All individuals mentioned are entitled to the presumption of innocence. While every effort has been made to tell the story truthfully and factually, some details may be subjective or based on personal recollection. Listeners should approach the content as a personal narrative, not a formal or factual record. Welcome back to the Spencer Files. Before the fake Zillow listing shook things up, there were a few twists and turns that set everything in motion. March was a whirlwind. It started on a high note. On March 3rd, one of Anna's closest friends got married. The wedding was absolutely beautiful, and Anna, one of the bridesmaids, looked stunning, as she always does. It was an incredible day celebrating love and friendship, one of those moments you hold on to. But just 3 days later, on March 6th, we were hit with something far less joyful. The aftermath of what I've come to call the Great Flood. The primary bathroom toilet had been left running for over 24 hours. What we didn't realize at first was that the water wasn't just overflowing. It was backing up because of a collapsed pipe in the front yard. That pipe, which connected the house to the street, had been overtaken by roots and was already on the verge of failure. The continuous water flow just sped up the process. This was something that should have been caught during our home inspection. When the plumbing company came out to assess the damage, they walked right over to a cleanout pipe that they themselves had installed years ago. Apparently, they had done work for the previous tenants, who had their own share of plumbing issues. We found out the prior owners had been told that roughly 60 feet of the main line would eventually need to be replaced. None of that was disclosed to us. So, of course, the bill fell on us. Technically, we had grounds for a lawsuit, a case of non-disclosure, but we didn't want to go down that road. Instead, we got to work. Again. We had to rip out brand new carpet, brand new baseboards, and even sections of the freshly finished drywall in both the primary bedroom and bathroom. Then came repainting, recarpeting, reinstalling. Everything had to be redone. But if there was any upside, any moment of relief, it was this. We were finally on the verge of moving in. On March 16th, my friend David, who's a talent manager and one of those guys who just seems to know everyone, invited me to a billionaire's 60th birthday party. This wasn't just any party. David had managed to get Roger Daltrey from The Who to perform live in the guy's backyard. The place had been completely transformed into a luxury event space. Massive tents, full concert stage, multiple bars sculpted entirely from ice, and yes, celebrities mingling like it was nothing. It was surreal. Some of the photos we took even ended up on TMZ the next day. Just a few days later, on March 20th, 2018, we finally moved into our house. No major surprises this time, which, after everything we've been through, was a relief. The boys were ecstatic to have their own rooms. For the first time in a long time, it felt like everything was falling into place. But this March had one more twist that we don't learn the truth about for years. A trust document had been drafted for Chet and Lois. Most of the family had no idea it existed, and as we'd learn later, neither did Chet or Lois, at least not when it came to the actual contents. That twist is a whole story for another episode. By June of 2018, the remodel was complete. Inside and out. New paint, fresh landscaping, everything was finally done. We were ready to breathe and to enjoy our home. That is until June 28th. That day, the previous owner of the house messaged me on Facebook. She said, "Hey EJ, wasn't sure if you were aware, but it looks like someone listed your house on Zillow as a for sale by owner. My husband got a notification, and when I checked the listing, it looked fake and poorly written. Just wanted to let you know so you can get it taken down." She had recently been in town visiting neighbors, and we'd even let her and her daughters stop by to see the house. She continued, "Thanks so much for letting us come by. The house looks beautiful. I love everything that's been done to it. I hope you guys really enjoy it. So I look at the listing. It was bizarre. The listing was inaccurate. Wrong square footage, wrong number of bedrooms and bathrooms. In real estate, scams like this sometimes happen. They frequently occur on rentals or Airbnbs where people create fake rentals to collect deposits before people ever move in. And they come move-in day, there is no rental, and the house is lived in by the real owner. But this? What was the end game? This was my home. I did not do this. So I contacted Zillow, and after going through the hoops of proving ownership, they took the listing down. I never confirmed who posted it, but I have my suspicions. Around this time, something else shifted. Actually, it just stopped. When Chet offered to help us get the new SUV, the plan, his idea, not mine, was that he'd make the monthly payments. The total came out to $978 a month. I arranged for the car to be in my name instead of his, not only to keep things simple, but also limit his liability. He would just transfer the money to me each month. This wasn't unfamiliar territory for Chet. He had helped other family members in this similar ways before, but for me, it was the first time. Then, one day, the payments just stopped. No warning, no conversation. Because the loan and title were in my name, I was stuck with the responsibility. I didn't even know how to bring it up. It just felt like such a privileged thing to complain about. But the truth was, I never would have done this on my own, and this wasn't my idea. Eventually, I worked up the nerve to ask him what had happened. He said, "Darren made me stop paying. I'm sorry. At least you had the car for a little while." That hit me sideways. What did Darren have to do with our car? Why was he calling the shots for Chet's money? Anna was worried we'd have to sell the SUV, but I couldn't do that to her, or to our boys. So I took money out of an investment account that I really shouldn't have touched and paid the car off. Anna had even started looking at vehicles that were cheaper and more affordable that she could trade hers in for, but this was not her fault, so that's why I took care of it. July 17th, 2018. Attorney Jeffrey enters the chat. I got a text from my grandfather, Chet. Grammy and I have been working with an attorney to get our financial affairs in order. He's going to reach out to you to make arrangements to get proper documentation for your loan and set up some payment terms. This way, Grammy will be protected should anything happen to me. His name is Attorney Jeffrey, and I wanted you to know he'll be contacting you. Now, that didn't sound like my grandfather at all. The tone, the formality, it wasn't him. I replied, "Okay, is everything okay with you guys?" Not long after, I got a call from Attorney Jeffrey. He started off polite, but that faded quickly. He accused me of taking advantage of my grandfather and said he wanted to memorialize the debt. His tone was sharp, almost confrontational. Feeling uneasy, I did some digging. Turned out, Attorney Jeffrey was a real estate attorney based in Orange County. I called my grandfather to ask what was going on. He said Darren had just been there and they had just talked about finances. But then, and this was the bombshell, he told me he never sent me that text. That made sense. It didn't sound like him. I began to wonder if Darren had sent it from his phone. I continued talking to Chet and told him about the conversation with Attorney Jeffrey. He said, "I didn't ask him to do that. We'll figure it out. That's not what I want." Shortly after, I got an email from Attorney Jeffrey's office. It said, "Dear Mr. LeClaire, attach your documents related to the $250,000 you and Miss LeClaire owe your grandfather, Chester D. Spencer, along with a self-explanatory letter from Attorney Jeffrey." This letter was hostile. Here's what it said. "Dear Mr. and Mrs. LeClaire, enclosed herein for your execution and return is the promissory note regarding the $250,000 owed to your grandfather, Chester D. Spencer. You will also find enclosed herein a deed of trust that serves as security for the promissory note. The deed of trust needs to have both of your signatures affixed thereto and both signatures returned. I need to have both the promissory note and the deed of trust duly executed, notarized, and returned to my office on or before 5 p.m. on July 30th, 2018. I appreciate the recent communications from Mr. LeClaire confirming that the money is owed to his grandfather, Chester D. Spencer. The enclosed promissory note and deed of trust are intended to memorialize and provide adequate opportunity for the loan to be paid. As you can ascertain, there are no payments until the due date of August 1st, 2023. As Mr. Spencer's legal counsel, it is imperative that I receive the documents back by the date of July 30th, 2018, in order to avoid any necessity by our law office to commence legal action to enforce the appropriate remedies. We frankly have a great deal of concern about the transaction having been done while our client clearly falls within the definition of an elderly person who was involved in a family transaction that was initiated by a grandson who happens to also apparently be a California licensed real estate agent. It is our goal and desire to avoid any necessity to activate California laws, rules, and regulations related to transactions by family members with elderly people. This absolutely shocked me. This wasn't what Chet and I had agreed to. We had an understanding. If I sold the house or became financially successful, I would pay him back. There were no scheduled payments, and Chet had even signed a gift note reflecting this informal arrangement. He was on the loan and the title. He owned it as well. This new structure, a balloon note for $250,000 due in August 1st, 2023, with a 2.25% interest and deed of trust, wasn't just aggressive, it was devastating. The promissory note had no monthly payments and no amortization. If it had been a traditional loan split over 5 years with no interest, we'd pay around $4,166.67 a month. But this note charged 2.25% interest, compounded annually, and early payments would go toward interest, not principal. By the end of 5 years, we'd owe $279,334. That's $4,655.57 a month. At that time, I was only making around $58,000 a year, just under $4,900 a month pre-tax. That's not a loan, that's a setup. To make it worse, Melissa had told Chet before that I had no equity in my townhouse, something that was flat out untrue, as Chet found out. But that lie caused confusion when I told Chet that I was paying him back from the sale of the townhouse. The attorney demanded the money to be sent to his office, not even directly to Chet. That made it feel even more suspicious. Eventually, I had to hire my own attorney, not because of my grandfather, but because of attorney Jeffrey's relentless pressure. My attorney and attorney Jeffrey went back and forth. It became clear that Jeffrey might not even be representing Chet's interests. I began researching Jeffrey's background some more, and the more I dug, the more I discovered connections to Darren. Turns out, attorney Jeffrey had done legal work for the credit union that Darren worked for multiple times. The purpose of this legal threat was becoming clear who it was actually for. I guess it's also possible that attorney Jeffrey didn't even know the truth, or he likely wouldn't support what we discover years later. But one thing remained certain. Chet would never try to destroy me financially. He told me that directly, and at one point, I even said to him, "I'll just sell the house and give you back the money." But he insisted, absolutely not. That was never what he wanted. He said there must be a miscommunication. He didn't understand why I was so upset, since he wasn't the one asking for anything. So to him, it didn't matter if someone else was pushing for something on his behalf, because it wasn't actually coming from him. Then other things started to come up, things that he had been told, like how I was supposedly hanging out with Harvey Weinstein, making millions of dollars, and planning to flip our dream house that we had just bought because that's how I make money. Melissa apparently sent him the fake Zillow listing of our house, along with pictures of me at the Roger Daltrey party. That got me thinking. Maybe Melissa had created the fake Zillow listing herself to stir the pot and make those other stories seem real. Melissa even once asked me how my friend Harvey was doing, which I didn't understand at the time, and I simply corrected her because I was pretty sure she meant my friend David. Emotionally, we were starting to unravel. Anna and I were struggling so bad that we even got the kids in the car and drove to Las Vegas to look at homes, thinking we might have to start over. We cried together more than once, always away from the boys so that they wouldn't know anything was wrong. It was one of the hardest things we've ever gone through. We had just moved into what we thought was our forever dream home. We had figured out the kids' future schools, and everything was starting to make sense. But now it felt like it could all get ripped away at any moment, especially after everything else we'd already faced. The delays, the flood, the construction chaos. This nearly broke us. It absolutely crushed Anna. We tried to keep the mood light for the kids, to make them think that the house hunting was fun because the homes were a lot newer and a lot bigger. But behind the scenes, we were unraveling. Still, Chet didn't want us to move. He told me that the whole point of his investment in the house was for us to be closer to family, not just my parents, but to him as well. His name was even on title, and he made it clear that he wouldn't let us sell it anyways. Meanwhile, Attorney Jeffrey was still at it, telling my lawyer that I had bamboozled Chet by pretending to be a real estate agent and forcing him to sign documents. None of that ever happened. I'm not pretending to be a real estate agent. I am one. Maybe he's the one pretending to be a lawyer. And it wasn't even my idea to buy the house. If I actually had it my way, I'd still live in a townhouse or a condo with no yard to deal with. Honestly, if there were a high-rise closer to where I needed to be, I'd live there in a heartbeat. But Jeffrey's threats kept coming. They clearly weren't coming from Chet, though, especially because Chet told me they weren't. Eventually, the emails from Jeffrey started to slow down, likely because my attorney was better at this than he was. Chet told me that he wanted to stop the whole thing altogether because he didn't understand why Jeffrey kept pushing so hard. He even told me that Jeffrey wanted to pursue other legal avenues against me, avenues Chet had no interest in and had not authorized. That just reinforced what I had already suspected. Someone else was pulling the strings. The pressure campaign failed, but not without damage. Now there's a lingering cloud hanging over us, that feeling that at any moment, someone might try to take away the safe space that we built. And the family fallout, that only gets worse. Much worse. Buckle up for the next episode of the Spencer Files. You'll see.